Hello, this is Lucy Cook, the Communications Manager at the Institution of the Chemical Engineers, and I'm here with Jon Prichard, our Chief Executive. We're here to talk about how IChemE has been addressing the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, and we'll talk about how members have come together to support the government's response. Now, I'd like to start by asking Jon what kind of measures IChemE has put in place to ensure that we can continue to deliver member services.
Lucy, thank you. Obviously, this is a very difficult time for members, wherever you are in the world, because the impacts of coronavirus and COVID-19 will be different for everybody. And we all will have personal family relatives that may be more vulnerable than others, and we will all have friends who also may be infected in different ways. So the first thing I'd like to say is, obviously, you're in our thoughts, and we hope that you all stay safe. In terms of how IChemE has addressed this, well, obviously, about 3.5 weeks ago, we ended up closing our offices, and that was following government advice in the various jurisdictions where we have offices. And so that meant that we all had to move to home working. Over the last 18 months, we have been running a number of IT-related projects, and we had invested in moving many of our applications to the cloud. And as a result of that, we were able to relatively seamlessly move the staff to a home working environment. And I think that IT infrastructure investment will need to continue, because there are still 3 applications that are on physical servers based in our head office in Rugby. In terms of the other impacts on the business, obviously, because we had been operating in a fairly global environment for the last 10+ years, we had been doing a lot of our meetings, compared to some of our sister institutions, through an online media in any case. So flipping meetings to all being online was relatively straightforward. The staff and the volunteers were already used to using the plethora of online tools that are available for the conduct of both business and meetings, and therefore it has been a relatively seamless exercise to move to an online environment. And we've got a trustee meeting later this week where it will be everybody joining online, but actually normally over half the trustees join online in any case. So that sort of side of life, the business as usual, has been relatively straightforward. There are other areas where in the past, such as the membership interviews, there have been physical interviews taking place. Those, of course, now are suspended, and all membership interviews will be done online. Separately, we're looking at the impacts that have been sort of suffering in universities, where those students who are due to take their final exams, or those students in their first, second or third year, were undergoing sort of laboratory work in particular. We're working through the qualifications team with the universities to understand those impacts and to help them understand how they maintain the learning outcomes and therefore the accreditation that those students need in order to enter the place of work with an accredited program or degree. So we're working in areas like that, and I think that that's important. Another area that there has been an impact has been in things like the key events. And so 2 of our key events are things like the Hazards Conference, which was due to take place in May, and also the IChemE conference at the end of September in Brisbane. Both of those have been postponed. We've postponed the Hazards Conference until the late November, early December, and that the venue is lots of positive, but we're hoping that many of the members who thought that will enjoy the practice of process safety and understanding hazards will continue to support the conference at its new timing. Separately, the IChemE conference, which was due to take place in Brisbane, obviously that requires individuals to fly from all over the world and all over Australia and New Zealand, and they have deferred it by 12 months. And so IChemE will be happening in Brisbane, but it'll be happening in 2021. And so those are the measures that we have taken, and there are some other events that obviously have shifted. The other area that we've been working with is the SIGs and the member groups. That's the special interest groups and the member groups. And we fairly early on asked them to move meetings to a virtual environment. And so the staff have been helping member groups and SIGs to run their meetings in a virtual environment. Lastly, we have obviously got commercial courses and training, and those are now all being run online where they can. And so there was a course due to happen the week after the lockdown commenced, and we're very grateful to the members and others who were attending that course, because at no notice they agreed to flip to a virtual classroom. I think there are lessons to be learned from that, in that an 8-hour day in a virtual classroom is not the same as an 8-hour day in a physical classroom, but actually, because they'd already allocated that time, that was their preference to continue to run it like that. Future courses, they're going to break the modules down so that they can be run in more manageable online chunks. But actually, the commercial team, training team, are looking at how they can convert all of the IChemE provision into a virtual or online provision. We already had quite a lot of online provision, and therefore the online training has seen a greater uptake from members and others over the last few weeks. But actually, we would see that trend increasing. So overall, I think that the institution has migrated as smoothly as it could have done into this online virtual world that we're all now sitting in, wherever we sit.
That's good to hear. Thanks, John. Now, we appreciate that this situation has affected our members significantly, from a change in working patterns to huge impacts on their business. Can you tell us about what IChemE is doing to support our members at this time?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of those that have paid, but I'd also like to recognise that some individuals will have now be experiencing a degree of hardship, which means that payment is not possible at this moment in time. Ordinarily, if you hadn't paid, we would have stopped member services at the end of March. We've extended that until July, so hopefully we'll then know, everybody will know a little bit more about how they are faring in an employment situation and a work environment, and therefore be able to make a commitment one way or the other to understand whether they wish to continue subscribing to institution services, or whether they wish to step back. I would say that in terms of what we are doing, continuing the access to the knowledge services and to the qualification systems, those are all running as normal, albeit the staff are not in the office and the volunteers that are doing the interviews are not going to be meeting physically. But fundamentally, having flipped to an online position, most members shouldn't see any difference in terms of the services that they receive, whether it's in the qual space or the learning society space. But I think that what we are sort of going to launch soon is the Knowledge Hub that allows members to access the knowledge more easily, and that is due to come out within the next month. And once that's out, we will let members know. We have got the Coronavirus Hub, Information Hub, going live on the website now. And so if you want more detail, please do look at the website, and we will tell you through the website the services and the access that is available to you. I would just sort of finish on that. If you're still struggling to make payment in July, then please do talk to us. There are things that we can do to help. There is a reduced subscription for those that are facing hardship. In addition to that, there is the Chemical Engineers Benevolent Fund, and they are already seeing an increase in the number of requests for support. But they have asked us to emphasise to all members that they exist there for members who are experiencing hardship. Please do look at the website, and they will be not welcome, because it's a sad circumstance when you have to apply that, but they will help you if you fill in an application form to the Benevolent Fund, if that's what you need. So please do look at those services.
Thank you. Can we move on now to think about what IChemE has been doing to support the overall response? So could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, clearly the chemical engineers sort of underpin much of society's fabric, whether it's the manufacture of materials or the sort of the production, provision of energy or food. And of course, one of the key areas for IChemE membership is in the pharmaceutical sector. And so we have seen through the Learn Society a number of members volunteering to bring together a number of strands of activity that will help to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So, for example, some of the areas that they have put together are in the area of vaccines, molecular therapeutics, the supply of medical gases, and diagnostic manufacturing. So there are those strands that they've put together, and those members, we've written to the government in the UK, and we've asked the regions elsewhere to write to their respective governments, offering up member expertise and assistance. We have responded to a request. So, for example, 2 weeks ago, we sent out a request to all members in Ireland as a result of a request from the Irish Health Service to help with the provision of both the supply of oxygen and oxygen distribution equipment for hospitals. And so those are the sort of things that we can do. In terms of the activity that happens in the media, we have been engaging with the national media. So, for example, some of you may have seen Trustee Keith Plum, who's leading on communications in this respect. He has given an interview on Sky News and identified the Herculean effort that is required in order to achieve the UK's target of 100,000 tests by the end of this month. And so we are seen as a source of expertise by national medias, and we're very happy to provide spokespersons as and when required. What we intend to do clearly is through the Coronavirus Hub, Information Hub, keep members informed. So if you're interested in finding out what's happening, please do look at that hub, which goes live on the website, as I say, today.
There seems to be an awful lot going on, and so as you've sort of already alluded to, there's a lot for members to take in. So I think it's really important to reiterate that if members do want to find out more, the Coronavirus Information Hub, which is launched on the website today, will be a really good place to have a look for all this kind of information. So that can be found from the homepage of our website, but also the links will be posted on all our usual social media channels. So I'd be keen for members to keep an eye on those too. So moving on, many members are working from home at the moment, meaning that a lot of the time that they would normally spend commuting can now be spent on other activities. Some members may be asked to work shorter hours, some may be furloughed. So it may be that members have got more time available to spend on developing their skills and knowledge. So can you tell us a little bit more about how they could develop their CPD at this time?
Sure. I think that it's important to sort of pick up on that obviously that we've had a greater focus on our Learn Society activity, but that shouldn't detract from the fact that actually our special interest groups and our member groups have got a good long history of providing information to the members, and there is a catalogue of back information available to members, depending on which special interest group you've signed up to. We did 18 months ago remove the charge to be a member of a second special interest group, so you can now, or second or third, you can now sign up to as many special interest groups as interest you. So if you want to dip into an area that isn't currently your main area of expertise, then please feel free to subscribe and tick the boxes on the My IChemE pages on the website. But I think that what we are doing is we're encouraging the groups, special interest and member, to do as much as they can, provide as much information through webinars and podcasts. There are also blogs. There's also access to the news articles through the Chemical Engineer, and the Chemical Engineer website is very much being maintained. And also, we've also got the knowledge section on the web, and as I said, coming soon is the new Knowledge Hub that will allow all of this knowledge information to be more easily accessible to members.
That's great. There's a lot of information available, which is really good to see. Now, given the effect that the pandemic is having on the economy, it goes without saying that IChemE's income may well be impacted. Can you tell us what measures IChemE is implementing to minimise costs?
Well, obviously we have been doing some financial forecasting and we've got a best, worst and likely scenario running from a cost perspective. And in putting that together, obviously we have looked at stopping the non-essential activity. You have to manage cash flow in an environment like this. We have got reserves. That means that our cash flow is not critical on a day-to-day basis, but it does mean that we do need to make sure that we keep the operating expenditure in balance with the income revenues that we are forecasting. So that has meant us to do some different scenario planning and to, as I say, to stop some of the non-essential activities. So, for example, we were going to start extending the scope on our ISO 9001 certification project. We've now stopped that. We were going to be spending some money this year on looking at building up for the IChemE centenary in 2022. And of course, that's not an essential activity. So whilst we will wish to celebrate the centenary in due course, what we've done is absolutely minimise to volunteer effort only the support for the project. And we are using the capacity within the existing staff rather than engaging new staff to support that kind of projects. So we're looking at those sort of projects. We do need to continue with investing in those digital projects, because obviously the only way that the IChemE can service a global membership is through increased and enhanced digital provision. So the digital projects that I touched on earlier are a critical part of our forward plan. We have Strategy 2024, which was published last August, and we are absolutely committed to delivering over the 5-year period, by the end of 2024, the 4 aims that we have set out in that strategy. And so when you look at what that states in terms of the actual activities, it has in there as a main plank under aim 4 a digitalisation strand, which we will continue to deliver. Alongside of that, we're looking at things like the digital impact for members and how the profession will reshape over this period. And some of the behaviours that we had in the past are being accelerated as a result of what we're all experiencing now, and that particularly true in that digital space. But I think that in terms of the cost management, we have furloughed some staff whose roles were impacted by and that's furloughed in the UK, some staff whose roles were impacted by the fact that there has been a downturn as a result of the changing conditions. We are looking at a number of other staff measures, because obviously the salary bill is around half of our operating expenditure. And as I said, we've stopped some of the projects that we have been deemed non-essential. There are other areas where savings will be made, because we're not going to have a huge travel budget this year. And ordinarily we have, for example, a physical meeting of Congress that was planned for May. We won't have all the travel costs, both the air travel and the train travel, to get everybody into the centre in Rugby from all over the world. So that won't be happening. And so there are some savings that will be happening through those sort of standard measures. But I think the key message is we're trying to avoid impacting on member services. We're trying to avoid impacting on the delivery of the protection of the public. So safety centre stuff and the work that's being done in terms of qualifying members. And we want to continue to deliver the aims as set out in Strategy 2024.
That's great. Thanks, John, for your transparency in that matter. Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, obviously, it's an incredibly difficult time for everybody. This unexpected circumstance that we find ourselves in. And even when it started kicking off at the start of the year, I don't think any of us predicted that we'd be finding ourselves in this very odd isolated working environment. So the thoughts are, please do keep in touch with your friends, keep in touch with your work colleagues, keep in touch with your colleagues, and IChemE can act as a network enabler for you to keep in touch with your subject specialism. But I would just sort of say thank you for bearing with us during this incredibly difficult time. And all I would say is that I sort of hope that you keep safe. And if you want more information, please do look on the Coronavirus Information Hub that has gone live today. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for sharing everything that IChemE is doing at this time and for making sure that members are kept up to date with all the decisions that have been made. I hope that everybody watching has found this useful, and we look forward to communicating with you in this way in the future. Thank you.